A busy night in the weather world as the plains blizzard continues, and winter storm warnings are up from Montana east to Wisconsin. Blizzard warnings in parts of South Dakota and Nebraska. Meanwhile, the east is, particularly the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast, is getting ready to see some of that as we have winter storm warnings from Pennsylvania up through New York State and Vermont. All sorts of winter weather advisories and ice storm warnings. Could be some serious icing in parts of West Virginia and northwestern Virginia. Severe weather raging across parts of the Gulf states. All of that and more. Much more. So much more. On tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show, brought to you by Omni True Value Hardware at 1226 North Wellwood Avenue in West Babylon, New York, and Southwest Suffolk County on Long Island. They are Long Island's largest rock salt source. And if you can't find it where you are, if you're not on Long Island, you just head over to Omni because they got it, along with all the great snow and ice melt products like Mag, Ice Pellets and Flakes, and Pellido. And, of course, wouldn't it be great to just see this both of these under your Christmas tree, those two snow blowers, and plenty of other supplies, whatever it is you need to keep your home safe and clean this winter, and also your business. 631-756-1125. Nowhere can you find better prices. The website is
OmniTrueValue.com. And wow, I don't know how I'd be able to get one of those into my house under the tree. Can you see me?
The snow blower? No, I there you go. Hang on a second.
Yeah.
Just give me a moment. Hey, I got to get rid of me.
Don't get rid of you, Joe. Then it'd be no show.
Move you. Now we're set. Sorry. These 8, I'm a creature of habit. So if we're doing this at a different time, and I get thrown off. Anyhow, the Christmas tree is lit. Here we are. It's Wednesday, the 14th of February. We've got this big plain storm, and you were mentioning Joe Lopresti on the chat board about the fact that they got a winter storm warnings all around him, but not where he is. He said kind of a hole. There's a lot of that going on with this particular storm because of how it's playing out and how the warm air is going to be moving up into upstate New York, for example. There's a hole between between Interstate 87 and the Berkshires. So basically right in there, you get the warm air goes up into that channel between the two mountains, between the Catskills on the west and the Berkshires on the east. And that's why you get some unevenness when it comes to who's got advisories, who's got warnings, and who's got nothing.
Well, Joe, it can be very confusing for a forecaster at any National Weather Service forecast office because he's got so many things to do, so many issues to attend to, and he's trying she is trying their best to put up as good a forecast for each specific or each separate county. And sometimes you end up with this kind of craziness where you have a winter weather advisory in one spot, but yet, as was mentioned, you're surrounded on all sides by winter storm warnings or winter storm watches. It can get very, very confusing, especially so at this time of the year. And I got to tell you something, folks. Looking at some of the maps for the next 6 to 10 or 8 to 14 days, it looks like, Joe, it's going to get, if you and I were like 20 or 30 years younger, we would probably be jumping up and down right now, getting all excited, like, and still a little early in the ball game for that, but I tell you,
you're referring, of course, to the cold.
To the cold, and also the possibility of maybe a little storminess. What's interesting is that the Climate Prediction Center now has all of a sudden gotten into putting out. And if you allow me to, do I have sharing capabilities?
I was just about to give them to you. Just when you said Climate Prediction Center, right? Let me get the share thing set. Hang on, just a second. Go right ahead and share your heart out.
I'm going to just move this up here.
I'll just bounce out of the way.
Yeah, I want to just make sure that I can get this up to. I'm trying to see here. Where's my? Oh, there it is.
No comment.
Is that my document there? And can you all see that?
Yes, we can.
There we go. They suddenly have gotten into this now, putting out full page, statements here, and the key messages for this particular. They had one a few days ago, highlighting the cold, but now they're also talking about, as you can see here in this headline, heading into the holidays with increasing risk for a winter storm in the east. Very cold Arctic air masses will envelop much of the nation during the week 2 period. That would be the 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. But more importantly, for a lot of you, a potentially impactful winter storm may occur for parts of the eastern Great Lakes, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast, leading up to and including Christmas Eve near the leading edge of these Arctic air masses. And the thought is that there'll be a cold air outbreak. We talked about this yesterday, how it's edging into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic around the 22nd, 23rd of December. And at the same time, some kind of a storm is expected to move up across the southeastern states. And whether or not these two coalesce will be determining whether or not we have either just a few flurries and a sudden drop in temperature, or maybe, just maybe, Joe, a full all-out old-fashioned pre-Christmas or Christmas Eve snowfall. I don't really know at this point. It's still more than a week away, but certainly over at the Climate Prediction Center, they are pulling the whistle string, so to speak, and alerting everybody to this potential for sometime late next week or a week from this weekend.
All right, well, we'll get into the long range in just a little bit. I'm not going to disagree with the assessment. I can see the possibilities there from what I saw on what I've been seeing on the guidance the last few days. But we'll do the first things first. We'll get this storm out of all covered because we still got to get through that.
Right.
And yeah, there's going to be some strange outcomes with this tomorrow. I think you're going to have some places that are going to wind up with more than what's forecast. I think you're going to find some places are going to wind up with less, depending on where you are. And of course, along the coast, it's just going to be mostly rain with just maybe a couple of snowflakes or a few ice pellets at the very start. David Fuller's the first super chat hit tonight. Thanks, David. You asking about? I know you got some new weather measuring device, but I don't remember the brand that you told me it was. So if you post it on the chat board, maybe Joe Rayo might be more familiar with it than I am. If you're new to the Joe and Joe Weather Show, welcome. Hope you enjoy it. And hope you come back, too. And if you like the show, hit the like button. You could subscribe to my YouTube channel with your Gmail account, and you get notifications. We're on Monday through Thursday, usually at 7:35, but tonight we have an 8:30 start, and Sundays at 11 a.m., and we come on Fridays and Saturdays on occasion if there's a storm going on. Otherwise, Joe and I take a couple of days off. So let's get right to it. And we will go first off. Let's do the watches and the warnings, which I have to find what I did with the watches and the warnings. Looks like I deleted the page, so let me bring that page back up. By the way, folks, I've been having some internet issues today. They're technically related. I had to with the new broadband, but apparently it's been fine for a little while. So let's keep our fingers crossed, and also hope that I don't lose power either. Otherwise, the show will drop out. All right, here we go with the watches and warnings tonight on the weather.gov page, and I'll make it just a little bit bigger here. Hang on. There we go. And we've got a whole slew of winter storm warnings up from central Pennsylvania and then across Pennsylvania into the northeastern corner of the state. But if you look closely, there are 3 counties that are inside that winter storm warning area that are under winter weather advisories. And that's in and around the Scranton area. There's a valley. and the mountains around it. So in the valley, they got the advisories. In the mountains, they got the winter storm warnings. Winter storm warnings up on the other side in the Catskills. And up the middle and upper Hudson Valley, again, west of the Hudson River or west of I-87. Winter storm warnings go all the way up into northeastern New York. Winter storm warnings for Vermont. Winter storm watches for New Hampshire and western Maine. I'm sure we're going to see those expanded and extended. We have winter weather advisories on the eastern flank of these warnings down on the east side of the Catskills. The only exception, though, is Joe, is Le County de l'Orange, Orange County, which they put under which the Weather Service put them under a winter storm watch for they're going for some bigger snow amounts. I imagine in the northwestern part of Orange County, it's not impossible. I think they went 5 to 9 inches for them, so it's not impossible. And we also have winter weather advisories for southeast and south central Pennsylvania. Now, that's mainly for some freezing rain and sleet tomorrow morning, right at the start of the morning commute. So just if you're in that area, just make a note of that. That includes Philadelphia, by the way, and the western counties of New Jersey are under this winter weather advisory as well. Washington, D.C., Baltimore, most of Maryland under a winter weather advisory. Western Maryland, a small portion of southwestern Pennsylvania, down into a couple of counties in West Virginia, and in northwestern Virginia, we have ice storm warnings in effect, going for as much as 3/4 of an inch of ice accretion.
Ouch.
And that coming in about 6 or 7 hours of time, so it's going to happen quick if it stays cold enough. We also still have blizzard warnings in the western part of South Dakota, western Nebraska, winter storm warnings eastern Wyoming, eastern Montana, across north and the rest of South Dakota and North Dakota, much of Minnesota. The county around Duluth is under a blizzard warning because they're getting the wind right off of Lake Superior and getting buried there. Northern and central Wisconsin, winter weather advisories in southern Wisconsin, on the upper peninsula of Michigan, and part of the lower peninsula of Michigan also under winter weather advisories. And we've had quite a bit of severe weather today moving across the Gulf states, and we've got a tornado watch in southern Alabama right now and in the Florida Panhandle. A lot of special marine warnings are up, and we also have flash flood watches up for the northern half of Alabama into northwest Georgia. So a pretty busy map here with these watches and warnings. The Plains, Joe, picked up some parts of the South Dakota getting 2 feet out of this and still going, by the way.
In fact, Joe, watching one of the evening newscasts tonight, the CBS Evening News, they had their report. In fact, it was the headline, the top of the news. New Orleans apparently had a tornado. I don't know if it was exactly within the confines of the city proper or what parish immediately adjacent to the city had it, but they did say that the New Orleans area was impacted by a tornado earlier today. And all of that activity, again, spawned by that tremendous storm that is situated right now out over the northern plain states, and eventually is going to spawn a new system that will have a say in our weather beginning tomorrow and into Friday across the mid-Atlantic and the Northeast. I might also point out that icing situation, it really does look like a very severe case of icing, maybe not too far away from Pittsburgh, which is a fairly significant city. Pittsburgh area looks like it's going to be in line for a lot more in the way of ice as opposed to snow, and that could really put a dent in anybody who plans to be commuting in and around southwestern Pennsylvania or in that vicinity of that major metropolitan area. It's a wild weather pattern. No matter everywhere you look, somebody is either getting it or is about to get it in one way, shape, or form from this massive storm system.
By the way, you could see from the signature of the satellite what's happening here, and we've been talking about the fact that the primary low, which is the low that's out in the northern plains, is still just too strong. If you looked at this, you could almost envision that there were now two separate systems, or soon to be, there will be two separate systems. You've got this one in the plains, and then this one is going to be the secondary that's going to develop and head northeastward. If this primary system were weaker, we'd be having a much different. We'd be having a different conversation for the coast. Yeah. I think the conversation inland would be the same, and in fact, probably it would be colder because we're still all these systems are still fighting against the block. They're fighting against. There's still the low that's southeast of Nova Scotia that doesn't want to go away. So all the players are here. Had the primary been weaker, this would definitely be a big storm for everybody from the northern Mid-Atlantic all the way up into northern New England. Meanwhile, look at the lightning strikes going on from Mississippi. You can actually see that line when it crossed New Orleans, Joe. It's on the first frame here on the satellite loop, is right over Lake Pontchartrain and over New Orleans and into southeast Louisiana. And now that line is holding together quite well as it continues to move on to the east. Let's check the radars where we could take a closer look at this activity. There's one severe thunderstorm warning, two severe thunderstorm warnings, a bunch of special marine warnings that are up from just east of Boothville in southeastern Louisiana and then running along all of the Gulf Coast to the Florida Panhandle. And also, right at the beginning of the loop, there were two tornado warnings there in Mississippi, in southern Mississippi, but those boxes have expired. So SPC said this was going to be enhanced risk and for yesterday and enhanced risk for today, and it was definitely a well-deserved.
Connie Anderson on the chat board. That's a new name I have not recognized, but welcome. Saying, I don't think we're going to be seeing grass for a while here in Binghamton. I think it was, 2 or 3 years ago where you guys in Binghamton picked up the 40-plus inches of snow?
2020.
2020. And here you are now. This is not going to be 40 inches. At least I hope it's not going to be 40 inches. But, you're right. It looks like that the bullseye for major or significant snowfall is going to be across central New York. And John, I'm thinking about, I know that the National Weather Service is saying maybe upwards to 5 to 9 inches in northern sections of Orange County. I think the places that are really going to get hammered in the Hudson Valley are going to be in Sullivan and Ulster County, especially up in the northernmost portions of those two counties where I could see up there, 8, 9, 10 inches. I think for Orange County overall, depending upon where you are, anywhere from 1 to 3 to maybe as much as 2 to 4 or 3 to 5 inches. But that's where the snows are going to be. Right here in my neck of the woods to the east of the Hudson River in Putnam County, I think we're going to have just enough of a push of mild air to, it almost looks like a repeat of what we had on Sunday night, where we picked up an inch or two of slushy, wet snow. No big deal. We may pick up that or maybe even a bit less than that. The FOOS is proclaiming, the last North American model FOOS from 18Z is saying that from New York City on up into northern Westchester and even perhaps into Putnam, the T1s, the boundary level temperatures from 1,500 feet down to the surface are going to be above 0 Celsius.
At what time?
Tomorrow evening, let's say after about 8, 9, 10 o'clock to into the overnight hours. I said to Renata, I said after midnight tomorrow night, we may be seeing moderate to even maybe heavy rain, not necessarily snow. I'm looking like at LaGuardia. They've got boundary level temperatures at the T1 level as high as +5 and +6. And you can't make snow when the temperatures are that warm down in New York. But again, even up in Albany for a brief time late tomorrow night, I think it's at 1 a.m., they're calling for a boundary level temperature of +1 in Albany now. Now that shows you how far north the milder air presumably is going to be bleeding northward on an east or east northeasterly wind to bring the temperatures up that far at the lowest levels of the atmosphere. So for places, again, that are to the east of the Hudson River, it looks like it may be a bit too warm. But west of the Hudson, you may be just cold enough to get a thorough whomping, so to speak, of snow from this system tomorrow, late into tomorrow night and Friday.
Now I'm looking here. These are the 8 o'clock observations plotted, because this is one of those nights. Whenever you have marginal cold air, it's always a good idea to look at a plot of temperatures and dew points to see what's going on. And a couple of things I'm just sort of noticing here. So if you look west of the Hudson River, which if for those of you who don't know, so it follow that line just like that. So that's sort of where the Hudson River is. Okay, all the temperatures there, mostly to the west and north of the Hudson River, in the upper teens and low 20s. There's even some low teens across central New York around I-90. Binghamton is 18 right now. You go down into Pennsylvania, particularly away from Philadelphia, and even Philadelphia is down in the low 30s at the moment. It's mostly middle 20s with dew points in the teens, and down in Maryland, it's mostly upper 20s and it's mostly low 30s there in Maryland and Northern Virginia. So it's cold, and extending down into the areas where they got that ice storm warning up, we're seeing some temperatures a little bit warmer on the West Virginia where the warnings are up. You've got, for example, in Bearden, West Virginia, 38 with a dew point of 15. In Garrett County Airport in western Maryland is 28 with a dew point of 17. So that cold air has actually bled its way down even into northwestern Virginia. Temperatures are mostly in the low to mid 30s. So there is cold air here. The problem is, because we've been having this conversation all week about the air overhead, and yes, it is marginally cold air. If that primary were not strong like it is, this air would be enough, even at the coast, to produce what would have been a mostly all snow situation. But certainly for the areas that are going to be at risk for tomorrow, the temperatures are setting up rather nicely for the beginning of this event.
Yeah, and even here in Putnam County, again, I mentioned to Renata, I said, it's been, we didn't get much above 33 or 34 degrees here today. Same for yesterday. Last night was well down in the 20s. I said, if for nothing else, when this starts, and it probably will start as snow because the column will be quite cold at the very beginning, with the cold temperatures, even on paved surfaces. I don't care if the sun is up with the ultraviolet and infrared rays or whatever like that.
It's December.
It's December, and it's cold, and the ground the
it's
last
cold.
2 or 3 days is cold. Yeah. So everything's going to stick really, really quick.
Oh no question. And the other issue is getting the precip in fast enough, and noticing that the radar here is already pretty loaded. I mean, it's already precipitating down in southwestern Virginia and southern West Virginia, and this stuff is moving quickly up to the northeast. I'm thinking it probably will be. It'll be certainly in south central, southeastern Pennsylvania, and over Maryland and northern Delaware and northwestern Virginia, where they have all the advisories and warnings. That precip's going to be coming in around or before daybreak. And probably reaching New York City, I thought, around maybe noon or 1 o'clock. And after that, it kind of slows down a little bit. As the block is still trying to fight this, as it's trying to lift up to the northeast. There's a lot of moisture there, Joe. The radar is absolutely loaded. Look at all that heavy rain back in Kentucky and Tennessee and on up into Illinois. I mean, all of this is moving on up to the northeast.
Yeah, I agree with you about the precipitation reaching us probably. I said somewhere between 1 and 4 tomorrow afternoon. 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. in the tri-state area, expecting that precip to arrive from southwest and moving northeast, covering our area. And again, initially, no matter where you are, probably starting off as snow and then gradually, depending upon where you are, the coastal areas first, you'll see the transition over to snow. And I don't see any kind of, much in the way of sleet or ice, mainly because the transition. I mean, the upper levels are going to be well above 540. That's the criteria for snow, is to get that 500 millibar level at 540 decameters, and we're going to be well above that. And this is the difference, really, and this is the difference I might point out between what we're looking at tomorrow versus what we were looking at on Sunday. Because on Sunday, we had very low thickness, not very low, but we had thicknesses in the New York tri-state area somewhere around 535, 532, 530. This time around, the thicknesses are warming up aloft, and so we have much higher thicknesses, 545, 547, and that plays out to be a difference in terms of snow. The snow, when you have a relatively mild or shallow layer of air within, let's say, 1,000 feet of the surface, if you have very cold thicknesses aloft, the snow is going to make it down as snow all the way down, even through that relatively mild layer near the surface. But in this particular case, with the thicknesses warming up so much, we're going to have more of a rain than snow pattern aloft, coming down into a colder layer, and even the colder layer is going to warm up very quickly, the boundary layer. So it's a different type of scenario coming up for tomorrow and Friday, as opposed to what we had here on Sunday.
All right, let's see what it's being forecasted as far as snow amounts are concerned. Now, a lot of people have made note of the fact that the snow maps on a lot of the models were showing some really horrifically high numbers. And the one thing that I think we all needed to do is those were all done at a 10-to-1 ratio. This is going to be a heavy wet snow with all that warm air moving up all the way up into upstate New York for at least a little while anyway. I think we're going to see snow ratios probably more along the lines of maybe 7-to-1 or 6-to-1. And if you adjust for those ratios, the numbers then make more sense, because a lot of folks that look at both the maps are saying, how come the models are showing these double-digit amounts and high double-digit amounts, and that the Weather Service has less than half of that? Well, that's the reason. It's the fact that it's going to be a heavy wet snow. Now, the further north you go, once you go north of I-90, for example, it's not going to really matter too much. There's going to be some big snow amounts up there on the order of a foot plus. But you also see the fact of the primary secondary low and how the warm air winds up going northward. You see that big space as I was pointing out, west of the Hudson, you've got a big area of heavy snow, and then there's this gap where you don't get so much. This is one of those times that Dutchess County, for example, which is on the east side of the Hudson, doesn't wind up getting as much snow as the folks on either side. And then the numbers go up again in northwestern Connecticut and on up through the western Massachusetts. Then there's another gap in the Connecticut River Valley, and then they go up again in New Hampshire, and then the rest of Vermont, New Hampshire, and going into Maine. So it's just a lot of topography here in a situation like this that's impacting amounts. In Pennsylvania, most of the amounts in the winter storm warning areas are generally in the 4 to 6 inch range. There's probably going to be a changeover to sleet, maybe even also to rain. On the eastern flank, it's mainly a coating to an inch or two that gets into the western counties of New Jersey. And as you go further south, particularly, say, from Harrisburg to Philadelphia, those areas at southeast and south central PA down into central and western Maryland, it looks like they took the advisory for Baltimore is out of it now, the way I'm reading it on the map, and so is Washington. So it looks like maybe they dropped it because they had it up further east, and they also had it up into northern Delaware, and I think they may have done away with that as well. So this is mainly going to be for ice, and again, we have that ice storm warning that is up further south. And here's the ice accretion map. There's a 0.72 there in northeastern West Virginia being indicated. Central and western Virginia, probably some areas of a quarter of an inch or more. But as you go into eastern Pennsylvania, it's mostly a tenth of an inch or less. And also up in upstate New York, going up toward Albany, and in and around the valleys in the Berkshires, also a tenth of an inch of ice accretion or less.
And I mentioned this yesterday, or maybe the day before yesterday, about how people, they look at the various maps, let's say off of Tropical Tidbits, for example. They look at the NAM and look at the colors, and they look on, let's say, the 23Z Thursday map for tomorrow evening. That would be for 6 p.m., and they see much of northern Westchester and Orange and Putnam County. They're all in blue. And they're saying, look at that. All the snow is going to be falling over Westchester and Putnam and Orange. But then if you look at what they have as the 2-meter air temperature, and for this you have to go to the thermodynamics menu on Tropical Tidbits. And here you see that in northwestern New Jersey and going all the way up to, well, almost right along the Hudson River. Places to the west of the Hudson are at or below freezing, but places, again, to the south and to the east of the Hudson, including Westchester County and Putnam, which supposedly are in snow, that blue color tomorrow night, it's above freezing. It's like somewhere between 32 and 35 degrees. So maybe there'll be some snow by 6 o'clock tomorrow night in these places. But if you follow along the thermodynamics here, that snow would probably be very slushy and very wet, and quite possibly would not even be sticking, except maybe to the very coldest surfaces. And within a few hours, with the way that the 32-degree line gets punched all the way northward, Joe.
Yeah, I have the map up there.
You have to. Yeah.
This is tomorrow morning. The 32-degree line is already north of New York City, north of Trenton, north of Wilmington, Delaware, right along Baltimore, Washington, and at 1 o'clock. I mean, yeah. Look, it's so warm in New England by 1 o'clock. It's actually more from coming in from the east. It's all New England's mostly in the mid to upper 30s, and the 32-degree line is just pretty much confined west of the Hudson, and in central PA, northeastern PA, central PA, down into northern West Virginia. Yeah, I'll draw it here so everybody could see it better. I mean, that's kind of like, that's the 32-degree line at 1 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow.
Right. Well, precip would probably just be edging in from the southwest at that time. But I mean, if you go now, the GFS, it goes at 6-hour increments. It would be interesting to see where the 32-degree isotherm is, and then take a look at the precipitation and see where snow is being indicated and where rain is being indicated. And I guarantee you that even on the GFS,
it matches right with where the temperatures are below 32. Everybody else is rain.
Now that's for what now? That's at 0Z, right?
No, this is at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh, so they jumped. They're really moving it. They're really pushing that line very rapidly into. I know the NAM there was some issues with the NAMs where the NAM is showing snow in the same area where the isotherm is well north of them.
Well, here's the NAM, the new NAM, by the way, which really goes bonkers with the ice. Look at that. It goes crazy with the ice. And then, as we move into the afternoon, it actually in Pennsylvania, the atmosphere cools and the sleet and freezing rain change over to that really dark blue heavy snow in central PA. And the NAM this is at 2 o'clock, Joe, at 2 o'clock on the NAM, and maybe what the NAM is saying that the cold air, the blocking high to the northeast, this thing is really fighting that blocking high. That the moisture's having a tough time making a northward progress here on this model.
So in other words, through just dynamics, through just cooling the atmosphere, dynamics. Yeah, exactly.
Here's what it looks like on the NAM's actually a little bit colder at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. It's got the same idea as the GFS. It's just got a larger area of less than 32. And I just drew it in red on the screen. That's all below. That's where the below freezing is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on the NAM model tomorrow.
Right. And if you're saying to yourself, well, that looks good, let's hope it holds on through the overnight, that ain't happening. not with that new system, that new coastal low taking shape and coming northward, as we've been saying, more or less a coast hugger. And that's not good news, because that just helps to bring in all of the milder air in from off of the Atlantic Ocean. What is the temperature of the Atlantic in our vicinity now? Does anybody know that? I haven't had a chance to check.
I
check
haven't
it
looked in a while.
Well, it's above 32. As you know, it may be even into the 40s, and that's not good for snow.
Yeah, I'll give it a quick check here. I'll see what it is. This Ambrose Tower is still out there.
It's been so long since I listened to KW035, and I used to listen, to everything they used to say. Ambrose Tower. How about Execution Rock?
Execution Rock's Eaton's Neck. Of course, I got the wrong weather service office here. Hang on a second. Let's go back to New York. I'm doing this on my phone while I talk to you. So give me a moment here. Well, everything is working. The ocean water temperature is... Okay, so Hudson Canyon is 55.
Wow.
15 miles east of Barnegat Lighthouse, it's 52. And Kings Point is 45. So the ocean's pretty warm. Ocean's still pretty warm.
You were asked about Ambrose Light, often called Ambrose Tower, the light station at the convergence of several major shipping lanes in lower New York Bay. Well, sadly, on July 25th, 2008, the Coast Guard announced that Ambrose Light, which was severely damaged when a tanker struck it on November 3rd, 2007, would be dismantled. So there you go.
All
it was
right.
done by the Abbott and Costello Dismantling Company. No, the Costello Dismantling Company dismantled Ambrose Light. So Ambrose Light does not exist anymore, sadly. That was a part of our childhood. Always used to love to listen to the conditions at Ambrose Tower or Ambrose Light.
Me too. All right, so we got the NAM is now out to 30 hours. So you can see what happens here on this model. It actually, it doesn't even reach New York City by about 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening. And there's a little bit of dark blue in northwest New Jersey, but it's mostly green everywhere else. Of course, you see the heavy rain along the coast. And now, with the big high to the north, is just holding there. The primary is back over near east of Minneapolis, and it's like this gigantic arm is lifting up and around. And your secondary is there. It's right on the right just north of Wallops Island, Virginia, hugging the coast and moving northward. Joe, if the NAM is right, you're snowing tomorrow night at 1 in the morning.
Okay, but where is the 32 isobar?
All right, well, let's look. Let's take a look. Hold on a second. I'm going as quickly as I can here. No, it's the 35-degree isotherm is over you. The 32 is way north and west of you. So tomorrow night, this is at 9 o'clock tomorrow night. I'm sorry, 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock tomorrow night. So this is the area that's below freezing. I'm outlining it in red. So anything above that, all of that area up north and west, north and east and north and west of that, the dark red line I just drew, that's all below freezing. So yeah, the 40-degree line is cutting right across northern the southern part of northern New Jersey. That's the best way to describe it, and just north of New York City, with 45 touching the south shore of Long Island.
I would be more inclined to believe that a place, a valley, a deep valley that tends to hold or trap the cold air, would be more likely to see enough cold air to hold on to the snow for a while. Joe, I'm located at, depending upon what GPS you're using, I'm at about 450 feet above sea level.
Okay.
So I'm not sure whether or not I'm going to still be snowing, especially since the thicknesses are so very high as you go up, higher up in the atmosphere. Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. It'll be interesting to watch tomorrow night and see what exactly is transpiring and what the temperatures are and what's taking place. But I would still go with the fact that, especially with that very warm ocean parked just off to my right or off to my east, any flow of air for any length of time off of that ocean is probably not going to do very well for holding on to the snow.
By the way, make no mistake, the snow that we had, the snow that fell on Sunday, really helped the cause of the cold air in upstate New York for sure. With snow cover the last couple of days,
Oh yeah,
draining that cold air southward.
oh yeah, no question
No,
about that.
okay. WPC. Here's the probability of at least 2. And it's touching northwest New Jersey, just touching the corner there. But it's a very tight gradient you go from 10% to 40%. You could almost walk that distance. Well, not quite, but it's a short car ride. Let's put it that way. And you see how far south it extends down into central Pennsylvania. And, of course, it's a no-brainer in upstate New York and so on. Let's do the probability of at least 8 and take a look. And here you have the Catskills northward up into the Adirondacks, a fairly high probability of at least 8. And this is the 72-hour period that takes us right until Saturday evening.
And you could see that the area of, I guess you could call it Salmon, which is just immediately outlined beyond the shade of red there. I mean, that's sticking down into Ulster County and also into part of Sullivan County as well. And that's why I'm saying that, you in the higher elevations up there, I think 8 or 10 inches may not be a lock, but if you want to see it and don't want to travel too far away from New York City, that's the place to go to see a lot of snow. And I noticed you're right, Joe, up in the Adirondacks, looks like it's pretty much a lock that they're going to get that much up there.
Yeah, not to forget our friends in the plains and in the upper Midwest. The probability of at least 8 in and around the western shores of Lake Superior and even the southwest shores of Lake Superior into Wisconsin. Fairly large area there, very high probability of at least 8, and then some leftover high probabilities back for at least an additional 8 in parts of southeastern North Dakota and northeastern South Dakota. And on I did load the snowfall forecast here up, and this is on top of what has already fallen. So we're looking at some big amounts again. Another a foot plus on the west shores and southern shores of Lake Superior. 20. Yeah, 20 there, and still another several to 6 inches on top of what's already fallen back through the Dakotas and down. This starts to lighten up a bit as you get further south into northern Nebraska, and you've got some scattered, mostly 1 and 2 inch amounts left over in the Wasatch Range and on up, excuse me, into the northern Rockies. And by the way, we shouldn't leave out the rain part of all of this because that's going to be substantial, and we'll look at the 3-day precipitation. A very large area of 1.5 inches of liquid from Maryland and Delaware all the way up into Maine and all the way back through upstate New York. And obviously what you see up here showing 1.5 inches plus in the Hudson Valley, that's going to be mostly snow. And that's also the area where the Weather Service are putting out foot plus. 3/4 of an inch to 1.25 inches, extending from Virginia all the way down into Alabama. A lot of that's falling right now and of course we've got those thunderstorms that are running east across the Gulf states, which we should also take a look at. SPC, I'll give a quick run here. You can see the enhanced risk of severe weather. Florida Panhandle, southern Alabama, southern Mississippi. It looks like we still have 3 working tornado watches at the moment. In fact, Joe, they got a moderate risk now. They got a small area of moderate risk SPC has in southern Alabama. And enhanced going into the Florida Panhandle. Marginal goes almost all the way up to Atlanta. And this is from now until tomorrow morning, 7 a.m. And then it shifts eastward tomorrow. The coastal Carolinas with a slight risk coastal South Carolina, Georgia, northern and central Florida. Slight risk for severe weather, and that comes with a 5% tornado risk, by the way.
Well, it's not often that you see moderate in the convective outlook. And what's even more amazing is, what month is this, Joe? This isn't April or May. This is December.
Yeah, but at least it's in the not that we want the severe weather. I don't want anybody to misinterpret this, but unlike last year when the Northeast was getting tornadoes in December, if you recall, right, which was totally out of the ordinary. This is at least down in the southern states where we're used to severe weather in these parts.
And David Fuller on the chat board mentioning here. Well, before I get to David, we have another, I guess, we got a lot of new people on our chat board here, and we thank you and welcome you to the Joe and Joe Show. East PA, he says, now even though ocean water temperatures are high, that helps fuel the gyre. And believe it or not, I actually thought he was talking about a gyre, Joe, and then he corrects himself further down by saying he wasn't talking about gyre, he was talking about fire. He said, could this storm become a bonbogenesis, pulling temperatures down from upper atmosphere?
Doesn't look not the case.
It's a bombo, not a bonbo genesis. You want cold air and you want something pulling temperatures down. Wait a little while. We're going to get into long range in just a few moments. And as far as David Fuller is concerned, he says, my handheld weather station is a 5,000 kestrel. Now, to me, a kestrel, Joe, is a kind of bird, kind of like a hawk. I've never heard of a kestrel. By the way, my weather station is a Davis, and I've had it now for a couple of years. And we all know the problems I've had with the tipping spoon. The tipping spoon, Joe, got stuck. And I have to climb like 20 feet up to get to the weather station to take the weather station off and unstick it. These are one of the things when you have a weather station. These are things that you start getting angry about when things don't work the way they should. It was stuck in mid-July, and last week when we had a bout of heavy rain, I took a look and I did like a double take at the board. I said, "Hey, look, it's recording rainfall." So apparently, whatever happened last week unstuck the teaspoon, and so now I'm getting rainfall totals again. So I don't know about kestrel, 5,000 kestrel, David Fuller. I've never used it, never heard of it before, but I do hope that, as you are saying on the chat board, that it's accurate. I can't give you good news because, again, I've never used it before, but let's hope that it runs better than my Davis weather station does.
And to go back to the question, was it East PA? Is that what it's?
Yes.
Okay. So the reason why this doesn't bomb out, if you look at what the upper air, you have, and I rolled it back a couple of days here. So you've got the storm in eastern Canada swinging through Maine, and then you see, of course, the big upper low with the storm in the plains. The problem is that upper low is where it is. All the energy is with the upper low back in Wisconsin. There's an extension of this. There's a short wave that's coming around, and you can sort of see it with the kink in the height lines here. But in order for this system to have exploded, you'd have to go back to the model runs of late last week, where this upper low opened up and found its way off the Virginia coast and started to close off and strengthen. Then you would have had an exploding, intensifying storm, which is what the models were showing late last week for this time for tomorrow and for Friday. But because the primary stayed too strong, it's not happening.
And Tim Gora, another new name here, asks Joe, in either of our opinions, would all of this severe weather so late in the year, would this affect next spring's severe weather, such as a delay or even an early start in 2023? I'm trying to remember, how did we do in the spring this year? Because again, we had all of that activity last December in parts of the Ohio Valley and Tennessee River Valley last year. Did we?
I don't recall anything unusual, be it that it was either overly above normal or overly below normal across the U.S. I think it was a typical March severe weather month. in the areas that usually get it. So I don't know that you could derive any connection between the fact that you're getting severe weather here. You do get severe weather in December across the South from time to time. If you're going to have big storms developing somewhere in the United States like we're having now with these busy patterns, it's not unusual to get severe weather where we're seeing it. So I wouldn't read too much into it, nor would I try to make a correlation between, because we have it now, you're not going to have it then. We don't know what the pattern's going to be like by the time we get to March.
Okay, so before everybody signs off, and I did, Chuck Cardillo says I'm having a great night, but I'm starting to doze off. I've been talking nonstop since my library talk at 6:45. Why don't we jump quickly to the long range, because this is an exciting, I think, in my opinion, it's an exciting looking long range, especially for those of you who are hoping and dreaming of maybe a white Christmas, Joe?
Well, look, you've got what you need as far as cold air is concerned, or you certainly will have it. So I'm starting with today. You see the big upper low. You certainly can see what's going on up in Canada and up near in the Pacific. You have an East Pacific oscillation that's negative and negative EPO, which in the world of Joe Cioffi, it's the one to have. We don't care too much about having a block as long as we've got the negative EPO. But in this particular case, we've got the negative NAO also continuing, at least for a while. Now, what's happening is that you're going to see above normal pressures all through the Arctic region from the west to the east, all the way across, which means that the jet stream is going to be displaced way to the south, and it opens up for a deep trough. I mean, a really monstrous looking trough that swings into the eastern part of the U.S. right toward the end of next week. And, I mean, this is cold, Joe. Storm or not, this is going to be very cold air that is going to be plummeting down into – now, I think, was it last night that we were looking and showing the European – was it last night that the European was trying to drop this – the operational European was trying to drop this vortex down into Arizona? And the ensemble said, the European ensemble said, no, that's not going to happen. It's all going to be in the east. Well, even the Europeans kind of woken up to the idea today. But that is a really deep trough that's coming into the eastern part of the United States. You've got cold air from Canada. You've got the alleyway set up for that cold air to come down. I mean, it's just going to come straight down and go all the way down into Florida. You're going to see some really chilly air if this verifies to get pretty far to the south. That trough is going to – now the question is, unlike yesterday, today the trough dives down a little bit further to the west, and you see the arm that's sort of swinging around. So that could allow for some storm development here, which is what the day run – what the evening run did today. And to an extent, the day run shows it. Even yesterday's runs, when we were looking at it last night, were very dynamic. Just didn't have the lows where you would necessarily want them, but we don't care. In the long range, you want them to be anywhere but where you are, because you know it's going to be different over time. So on this particular run, when I saw it, I thought, it's too bad it's the 192 hour. Because it's going to be different to an extent. But the overall theme, I think, is going to be, regardless, we're certainly going to have this cold plunge coming down, and the question is, is that northern jet going to be able to swing far enough around to our west? And in this case, it picks up a system off the Florida coast and drags it up the eastern seaboard. Just kind of has it a little bit offshore if you take a literal view. But you know what? Wouldn't be much of a stretch to have this a little bit further to the left and have that coastal low a little deeper and a little bit further to the left. I mean, that's a bitter cold high. I'm really impressed by this.
I am too.
That's a 498 thickness, by the way, going into West Virginia, Ohio, Eastern Kentucky. When we have more time, we'll go over what thicknesses are. Just trust us on this one. That's the core of the Arctic air. And when the number's down under 510, it's cold. And
Indeed.
in fact, if we look at the anomaly, take a look at the extent of the below normal temperatures, and that, by the way, that's more than minus 28 degrees below normal in the up in Montana and in the Dakotas. Okay, that's in Celsius, not in Fahrenheit, in Celsius. So we're talking
This
about
is
temperatures 50 to 60 degrees below average.
this is reminiscent of the great Arctic or polar outbreaks at Christmas time from 1980, and also another one not quite as strong in 1983. In 80, I remember the temperature fell like 50 degrees. It was like in the upper 40s the day before, and when I woke up Christmas morning, it was like 2 degrees below zero.
We had about an inch of snow that night with the Arctic front because I went to midnight mass at St. Benedict's that year. Your church.
Yeah, I met you at St. Benedict's at midnight mass the following year, but that was the year we had heavy rain.
Right.
And you looked like you were going to cry.
I know. But I mean, this is very impressive. So you look at this and you think, you got all this Arctic air pouring in, something's got to happen someplace. And the models have been kind of keying on that December 22nd, December 23rd date now for about a week and a half. So it's not it's kind of interesting that it's been sort of keying in on that date on a lot of model runs for the last week to 10 days, and we're still looking at that time frame.
All right, before we sign off, too, there were a lot of people who hit Super Chat, I think, and we just didn't get to them. I just want to, going back in time here, Barry Goldberg, thank you very much. He wishes both of us and everybody on the chat board an early happy holiday wish. And then further down, we have the chairman. Hey, the chairman is back.
The chairman is back. Yay for the chairman.
He says, hi, weather family. Mother Briller dealing with COVID again. Be back soon. So thank you so much, Scott. We wish your mom a quick recovery. And I think that's it. But I know we had others. And we just got so deep into weather tonight, Joe. I think we just did not
thank everybody.
Get back to that. Thank you.
Yeah, I just see. I can only see Scott's super chat hit. I can't even see anybody else's. I'm trying to roll back here on the chat board. There's Barry Goldberg. Thank you, Barry. David Fuller hit it earlier, so that covers most of it, Joe. I think that may cover all of it.
Okay.
So that's good.
I'm just concerned that
I think we might have missed one person.
So
whoever you are, one person, thank you for hitting Super Chat. Sorry I can't see your name.
And thank you also for all of you who were tuned in tonight. 122 likes tonight, Joe. Third consecutive night we've gone over the 100 mark.
Which we like.
I have a funny feeling that tomorrow night when we go back to our regular 7:35 time frame, we will have another night filled with people and filled with excitement and filled with interest, and we'll probably go over the 100 mark again as well. Maybe tomorrow night we should shoot for 200, since we'll be right in the thick of things with the storm system. And somebody asked very early on whether or not the potential for next week is similar to the Donner and Blitzen snowstorm of 1966, which hit on Christmas Eve. No, that storm had a big cold high in place over the Northeast and a good old-fashioned storm coming up along the eastern seaboard. I said last night, this pattern that's shaping up for late next week kind of reminds me of the February 2nd Groundhog Day mini blizzard in 1976, where we had a storm coming up along the eastern seaboard. Temps were in the 40s and 50s. We had moderate to heavy rain in New York. And then all of a sudden, the cold front met up with that storm somewhere off the mid-Atlantic coast. The storm just blew up. And by the time we got to 7 o'clock in the morning, that storm had gone down to 28.5 inches of mercury, whirling away near Cape Cod. And for about an hour or two, we had rapidly falling temperatures, tremendous winds, and some parts of the tri-state area had a quickie 2 to 4 inches of snow. Whether or not we see that again at the end of next week, stay tuned. If you want something like that, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but if you want something like that, you've got the ingredients all with the frigidity of very cold weather heading our way. At the same time, we may have some kind of a system off the coast. And if you don't believe me, go back and look at the CPC, because they're already headlining that potential on their site as well.
And two more Super Chat hits. Robert Russo hitting Super Chat. Thank you, Robert. And we have a new gentleman here. I think it's a gentleman. PP Face 12. PP Face 12. Thank you for the super chat hit. Well, I know you're new to the channel, and you. By the way, he very nicely said two best weather guys on the East Coast. Thank you.
Oh, really?
And yes, and he.
How much did you pay him to say
I
that?
didn't say he did. I didn't pay nothing. He had tomorrow night. We're back tomorrow night at 7:35 Eastern time. That's our regular show time, Monday through Thursday at 7:35. By the way, for those of you who are interested, the link is pinned to the top of the chat board for additional winter weather coverage that focuses generally in the area from eastern Pennsylvania to southern New England. I have a not really very expensive subscription weather website, and the link is up there. Take a look at it if you're interested. We appreciate your support very much, and thank you again for the super chat hits tonight. So I know you're all talked out, Joe. So we'll call it quits, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.
Au reservoir, everyone.
Nighty night.